Why I started 75 Hard is really from me learning about it from a number of people of in my men's Bible study group. I then started to hear about it and think about it. And ultimately, as a man of faith, I also follow my intuition. That intuition just kept humming in my head. But that wasn't before my brother unfortunately passed. Now I have an older half brother, older half sister, and an older half brother who, as I mentioned, passed. Now, years ago, I was feeling like I couldn't live up to my own potential. I needed something radical to push me outside of my comfort zone or what I believe my comfort zone was. And, from my brother's story, it really put something over me. And then also with, again, all these kind of just conversations or situations or just hearing about it enough, I then said, this is something that I have to do, and I'll talk about that. So my story essentially is, when I moved to Austin, Texas in 2019, I was an anxious dater. I was socially drinking. I was worrying a lot. I was unsure and not really taking action, right? I could find great ideas, but was waiting for them to be validated by a bunch of people, as opposed to doing the work to grow the thing to have people want, right? So instead of seeking external validation, I now, promote from within. Now, my brother's story, he's very successful growing up, managing pizza restaurants, and was able to get an incredible management job with a department store. In the kind of background check, found out that he didn't have a college degree and was rescinded the offer. He then went to do social media for a number of years at Dish in Denver, and really just life kind of got mundane. It wasn't really motivation to, rise in the ranks or find a better job, because a better job or a job was better than no job, right? And he did go back to get his associate's degree, which was awesome, but ultimately just kind of disconnected with the world, took to drinking. Ultimately, it ended up taking his life. Now, this is just a complete summation of his, 47 years that he was here on this earth. But just to give a paint a story in the sense of, if some of these things kind of resonate with you, that's in some ways how they, resonated with me, where I just felt trapped or stuck or unsure or just frustrated or unknowing of what, I could do or how to do it, right? And so again, as I was hearing from people about 75 Hard, this Bible verse came to be, and it's Romans 13:7. And it says, pay everyone what is owed. If you owe the tax collector, pay your taxes. If you owe the revenue collector, pay your revenue. If you owe someone respect, pay him respect. And if you owe someone honor, pay him honor. Now, this is something that really resonated with me, because ultimately that was an important thing where I didn't want to become essentially that and have these, challenges that my brother experienced. And so the best way to ensure that it wouldn't be a, kind of a curse, if you will, or something that I struggled with for myself or even future generations, was to radically transform and ensure that it couldn't, right? So that's why I initially started 75 Hard. I then went into doing it about kind of halfway through. I was talking to one of my mentors, and he said, hey, like, he's done it before. And I said, hey, I'm thinking about doing it for myself. Like, what do you think? And he said, do it. And so I was processing it as I, continued to, do it. And ultimately, yeah. So I initially started 75 Hard on November 10th of 2022, and successfully completed the first time as an ode to my late brother in 2023 on January 24th. Now, this would have been his, 47th birthday. And the reason why, I did that intentionally, and then of course had that Bible verse as like the overarching theme of it. Now, through that process, kind of a third of the way through, I started to think about, why I would only kind of do this for, someone else. And later on towards the end, I connected with, one of my mentors who's also done 75 Hard, and said, hey, like, I've been doing this as an ode to my late brother. Should I do this for myself? And he said, yes. Well, actually, he said, do it, right? Didn't even say yes. He just said, do it. And that was like the mindset and the intention that I was in, to just say, okay, let's go, right? And so after I successfully completed for Ode to My Late Brother, I then, did it myself. I want to take a moment to say, like, if you at any point of doing 75 Hard feel as though you can't, I hope also that me sharing, like me doing this 150 days, like, is inspiration and recognition that like you can, because that's, I think, the challenge in this is just the mental toughness of like, is this possible? Like, could you run a 4-minute mile? Well, Robert Bannister did in 1954, right? And so he really proved and paved the way for that. So just want to take a moment to let you know, like, that this is possible. It's not, again, for everyone, but it is certainly possible to successfully complete the first time, as well as, if you do fail at any point, to pick things up, iron things off, and really just refocus. So, okay, now let's talk through what I learned in this challenge. It ultimately helped me play chess with my schedule, with habit stacking and being productive. I set boundaries and expectations. Hey, I can only meet for 1 hour, or I have to leave at this moment. Let's catch up later. It helped me avoid the whirlwind of everyday life and putting my goals as a priority and then communicating that to other people. So that way it wasn't me just necessarily Irish goodbying, although that is a helpful strategy sometimes. It helped me create routines for success, both for the morning routine and night. I've honestly slipped away with some of the night routine sort of stuff. So it's something that's been great to record this video and share about it. It also helped me bring awareness of how much time I spend and in different happiness states, change the people I spent time with, sometimes intentionally, but sometimes they just fell away naturally, right? Such is life. If I no longer go to the bars, or if I do go to the bars and I'm not drinking or drinking my face off, right? That's obviously going to change some of the people that I'm around. I became more intentional with myself on what I did and who I did it with because, I had less time. I also invited more people along the way, right? Hey, I'm going to this workout. Like, do you want to come? I need to do an outdoor, walk or exercise. Like, do you want to come? Sort of thing, right? And so I know so many people that often fail to, remember like why they started and what the point of this is. And I believe ultimately 75 Hard is something that we can share and experience with others and live kind of our life to our healthiest and best self. So don't feel like this is something you need to do just by yourself, or you also have to have someone doing 75 Hard every single day, every single moment, right? Invite different people along the way. My 70-year-old mom at the time was getting her hip replaced, and she was saying how she would walk around the inside of her house for 45 minutes because at the time she was living in Colorado, and it's too cold to go outside, and would also like hurt her hip with the cold. And so it, again, just to say like how you can inspire other people by doing what you're doing. So the other things I found is I became specific with my communication, right? And the words I used, and they were a lot more literal, right? I will be there in 5 minutes is very different than I will be there in 5 minutes and then need to park, right? It really sets transparent expectations for someone so there's no surprises, and it's the best way to communicate. My communication is transformed dramatically with this as well. And I now have this thing of specific communication and non-specific communication. And my viewpoint is that non-specific communication shows the lack of self-awareness and compassion for others. Okay. So the more specific you can and thinking of how that would impact or how someone would think about something and communicating that way, as opposed to, hey, I'll be there in 5 minutes, right? And then they're still waiting on their phone or for you to show up, but you also need to park or something like that, right? Or, hey, I'll be there soon, right? Like that also creates kind of anxiety in someone. And so being kind in that aspect is an important thing. Okay. Another thing that occurred was I grew my self-confidence, right? I did what I said what I was going to do. And I also said less too of what I was going to do, either in my head or out loud, because I knew that I would then be accountable to that. And this interesting thing came up in terms of accountability. So a man who needs accountability lacks integrity. I also believe this is true for women, but ultimately as a man, I can speak from a presence of being a man. So don't feel as though you have to have accountability people. That just means it's an opportunity for growth in terms of integrity. Now, the last two things that I found that were really transformational for this is I became more aware of my emotions, right? Thoughts or actions showed up and impacted people. So especially the first time I did 75 Hard, I was extremely hard on myself and that projected onto other people. No, you got to do this. Come on. Like, why are you late? Let's go. Second time, and really in addition throughout the other times, I was a lot more kind to myself, understanding for other people. And it's this idea of like, if someone stubbed their toe, listening to them in terms of what they're saying, and I could be there with a broken arm and just be like, wow, it seems like that was really painful and challenging for you. Like, tell me more about that. And if, they were also to ask me, they're like, oh, well, it seems like you're, hurt or injured. Like what happened with you? Like, oh, I, broke my arm, but I'm, very thankful that it's going to be healing soon and things like that. Right. This ability to create space and really show up for people and pour into them and really nurture and care for them, how they might need, maybe emotionally, physically, mentally, proactively through communication is transformational, right? And so giving that ability is really have from the experience of 75 Hard, where I've done just so many hard things that now some things that other people are going through just seem very light. And it's a way for them to then just express and share maybe what they're going through and, resonate with them and really pour into them as they, might need, and recognize there's higher levels as well. So, and I also recognized how I made excuses for myself and for others. And so now I'm showing up for myself. I am myself. And like I said, I create spaces for others. In the early days, you are going to be challenged and ultimately going to realize that you really committed to this for 75 days. And so, although the first few days are tough and you'll definitely get some wins, I found that like after the first week, kind of the thoughts of like, am I strong enough, disciplined enough? Like there were these intruding thoughts that were coming to be. But ultimately, keep in mind the secret to transformation that nobody ever talks about is that it's not being ready, it's by doing, right? If I needed to always feel ready, I would never have taken that action, right? It's like the quote that says, do it hard, do it tired, do one more, right? So don't wait for motion every day. Focus on one task at a time. And that's ultimately how you're going to get through every day. There were days where I absolutely felt like quitting, juggling 2 workouts, the gallon of water, my daily tasks, just life and things just felt impossible. Gosh, just like even getting invited to that cool concert I really wanted to go to, but I haven't yet finished my workout was a challenge. And I found that sometimes people are either hermits or they kind of rise above it and go with it, right? Again, the idea of inviting people along the way. And so want to share that like the real truth about discipline is like it's a muscle. So the more you use it, the stronger it gets. And I found like having a book physically with me, changing maybe some of my friends, changing some of the habits, noticing my emotions again, all these things really came to be in terms of like some of the things that I felt was challenged throughout really this entire program. And in those things, especially as you get into the early teens, especially the 30s, the 40s for the most part, I think are kind of an ease, but the late 40s, early 50s, and then like there's always one time in the 60s that just like comes out of nowhere. It's the idea of like you didn't come this far to only come this far. And it's a quote by Jesse Itzler. So keep in mind the impact that you can continuously make with being consistent and true to yourself based on the systems that you build and the commitment that you ultimately made for 75 days to complete this challenge successfully the first time.